Something that I haven't seen very often. It's usually shutting down a product is the last resource. It's like, oh my God, like if you don't shut it down now, we're all going down.
You take an idea and you put it on the table, and with a small group of people, you work on that. You work on it in an intellectually honest way. So you kind of say, hey, look, I'm not attacking the people that brought this idea, but I am going to try to make that idea better.
You are operating at the scale that you are operating, and you identify something and you want to change, then what? Like, how do you go about actually influencing change without dying in between meetings?
In that case in particular,
one thing is going to the founder with an idea on, hey, we should do this, but hey, we should kill the baby.
You know, we didn't have that, and I think that was in some ways part of its downfall.
Hey everyone, this is Carlos. I'm the CEO at Product School, and I'm very happy to have a returning guest on the pod. His name is Joff Redfern, and he's a partner at Menlo Ventures. Joff was a product executive before he turned into VC. His life philosophy is less is more, and outside of work, he's an avid adventurer. He lives in a farm with his wife and family, and he also loves sailing. Welcome to the show again, Joff.
Carlos, it is amazing to see you. It's been a long while. Congratulations on all the success you've had.
Thank you, and happy to have you back. Last time you were the VP of Product at LinkedIn, and then from there you became the Chief Product Officer at Atlassian, and now you're a VC at Menlo.
Yeah, it's been that long. Wow, man, time flies.
I need to ask you about your lifestyle. So tell me more about what was your rationale behind this living in a farm?
Oh, the farm thing. The farm is amazing. So about 3 years ago, when I was at Atlassian still, we had this board meeting and we made a decision that we were going to go remote. But unlike other companies that were saying, hey, we're going to go remote, but it might be temporary, Atlassian said, we're going remote and that's a permanent decision. And in part because Atlassian was already a remote company. We had office in Sydney and India and the East Coast and the West Coast of the United States. So I came home and I said to my wife, I said, hey, we could live anywhere in the world. Where do you want to live? And she had grown up living on a farm on the weekends in Wisconsin, and she really wanted to become a farmer. And as you pointed out, I love the water, and I really wanted to live close to the water. So during COVID, we settled on Santa Barbara. We looked up and down the coast of California. Santa Barbara, if you haven't been there, is absolutely an amazing place. And yeah, now I live on a farm. I love saying that we are food, water, and energy independent, and that gives me a lot of comfort knowing that we are leaving a light footprint on Mother Earth.
Love it. Well, I'm going to pick up the conversation from where we left it off. I see that you were a VP, actually before LinkedIn, you were a VP of product at Yahoo since 2003, right? So you've been a VP of product for a very long time. Joff, I would love to learn more about your life as a VC and how was that transition? So first of all, when you've been working as a VP of product at companies like Yahoo, LinkedIn, then Atlassian, and then you became a Chief Product Officer. So can you tell us more about what is the difference between being a VP of product and being a Chief Product Officer?
Yeah. Well, in some ways it's a very similar role, and you're doing it at the next level up. I guess I should start by saying the Chief Product Officer role was really unique at Atlassian. Atlassian, for the life of its company, has been run by its two founders, Mike and Scott. In a lot of ways, when I joined, Mike and Scott were also the Chief Product Officers, as well as being the co-CEOs, because they have such a love and passion for the products that they're building. So when I joined, I remember having a conversation with Mike shortly after I joined, and I said, you realize that the two of you are so active on the product side, and would we ever go to market and look for two Chief Product Officers? And he's like, no, I don't think we would do that. And I think that in a lot of ways set up the journey for, at some point there really needed to be a Chief Product Officer, someone that was going to be responsible for the product portfolio. I would say the core differences between the role at the VP and the CPO levels, every time you come up a level in a product role, you get closer to becoming both a general manager and a people manager. Like in a lot of ways, the job that I had at the CPO was that of hiring amazing talent, making sure that talent was running their respective areas of the business really well, to the extent that they weren't, making sure that they either grew into the role or moved to a different role where they could be successful. So talent management takes on more meaning. And then general management as well. The product roles that I've always been in, you are not only responsible for building a great product, you're responsible for building a great business. And if you don't build a great business, then we don't have the money to invest in building a great product. So that you get closer to your shareholders, you get closer to the board. Obviously, you're working in a tight circle with your exec ops team, which is the CEO and the chief marketing officer, the CFO, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so I'd say those are two key differences. I felt much more the people aspect, the talent aspect, and then the GM aspect. And I guess a third one would be, I loved, Obama was once asked this question, like, what's hard about being president? And it's like, what's hard about it is that, I have all these smart people working for me, and all the things that they can't solve, the hardest problems wind up on my desk. So in a lot of ways, the things that I was getting my hands into were just really gnarly problems that my super competent leadership team wasn't able to solve. So that would be another core difference.
And you mentioned that you also got access to the board, right, as a C-level executive. Now you truly have an oversight on what's really going on outside product, outside pretty much any part of the business. And what was the role that product played at the board level?
Yeah, the board, it's, especially at a place like at Atlassian, it's very much about the product itself. So a lot of it was looking at what's the future roadmap looking like. We'd be sharing quarters, year and a half out. What are some of the big products that are coming? We'd be talking about strategically what are some of the big moves that are being made not only by ourselves but by our competitors. So yeah, product has a very active role at the board level.
And then, Atlassian is one of those iconic companies for many reasons. Well, first of all, they have been pretty big on remote work for a long, long time, way before the pandemic. But they also bootstrapped for a very long time until they became public, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So what are those? Those elements are very unique to the culture, and I wonder how that impacts the way you go about building product, attracting talent, and overall running the business.
Yeah, COVID was interesting because in a lot of ways we had tons of practice rounds before the pandemic happened and we shut down all of our offices, because we had the company was started out of Sydney. We had built a big U.S. presence. That U.S. presence was on the West Coast. We had a big office in Austin. We had an acquisition we did with Trello in New York. So we had a large U.S. footprint. We were building out another office in India. So we had a fair amount of folks that were joining the organization from India. So when you get into these multi-geographic companies, you already had to deal with the idea of, hey, how are people going to handle it when they're in different time zones? What are some of the rules? What are some of the philosophies? For example, we had already established that you should have 4 hours worth of overlap with anyone that you're working with. So that allowed us to construct teams that, again, were, I would say, coming into COVID, we had a lot of practice on how we were going to pursue our remote work.
And as I think about companies like Atlassian or LinkedIn or that have multiple products, but underneath that there's a platform. I want to learn more about your take on how to build a platform that can support multiple products.
Yeah, that was a big platform was a big unlock for Atlassian. remember Atlassian started as an on-prem business. So you would take the Atlassian software, you'd run it on your own servers. Typically, those servers were either racked or sitting in your in the office buildings that you owned. And then, in order to move that towards a cloud world, we realized that you should really build a platform. There's a couple of things about building the platform to keep in mind. One is that the reason why you do the platform obviously is you're trying to get code reuse. So you're trying to build something once and then have multiple products use it. A great example of that would be, a file uploader. The file uploader for Jira couldn't be as good if it was just built by the Jira team, but because it was going to be utilized by the Jira team and the Confluence team and the Bitbucket team and a number of other teams, you could take a team and actually invest in making that world class and invest in having it integrate not only with your desktop, but maybe with Google Drive or Dropbox. You could justify doing that. Another thing about a platform that we don't really talk about is that a platform gives you the ability to get go-to-market leverage. So some of the things that we would do to increase the usage of our product, those would be some of the sharing components, the commenting components of a collaborative software that Atlassian ran. That came out of the platform. Things like login, making it easy to reduce friction to sign up for one of our given products. Having that at the platform also gives you leverage on getting your product out there and distributing. So it actually helps not just the R&D department, but it also helps the go-to-market department.
This episode is brought to you by Eppo, the next generation A/B testing and feature management platform built for modern growth teams by alums from Airbnb and Stitch Fix. With Eppo, you can increase experimentation velocity while unlocking rigorous deep analysis. From setup to troubleshooting to analysis, Eppo makes experimentation easy. An accessible UI makes it easy to dig into performance. And out-of-the-box reporting makes it easy for you to avoid annoying prolonged analytics cycles. Check out why companies like Twitch, Miro, and DraftKings rely on Eppo. Visit geteppo.com/product school and 10x your experiment velocity. That's geteppo.com/product school. One of the challenges that I see in general when building multiple products is you talk about the structure, right? That there's a team that focuses on Jira, a team that focuses on Confluence, a team that focuses on Bitbucket, Trello. How do you go about ensuring certain levels of consistency so people know what the resources available are, as well as what are the priorities for the business, so everybody's pushing in the same direction?
Yeah, again, the platform allows for you to have that level of consistency. There's also the platform that exists in the design patterns themselves. So we spent a lot of time looking at the design DNA. If you were to stand 10 feet away from a screen and look at the products, you should know that they're coming from Atlassian. So there's a bunch of effort that went into ensuring that level of consistency across the products. So I'd say between the design and the platform itself, you pick up the advantage of that consistency that you're looking for across your products.
So how did you go about identifying the product teams? Like, did you deploy specific heads of product per product? Was there like a head of platform product?
Yeah. At the highest level, Atlassian is in 3 different businesses. We're in serving software teams. Inside of that, with things like Jira and Bitbucket and new products like Compass. And then the second service line that we're in is Jira Service Management. So you can think about that traditional ServiceNow, customer service business. That's our second business unit. And that has a collection of products in it like Jira Service Desk. And then we have a third area, which is Work Management for All. And in Work Management for All, that was the other billion knowledge workers. And in there, we had products like Confluence, Trello was in there as well. So at the highest level, we had heads of product for each of those business units. And then underneath each of those business units, you fan into the respective products. So there might be 3 or 4 different products underneath each of those business units. And then to the side of that was a platform leadership team. and that platform was also kind of broken down into its respective components. But that's how we ran the business and broke it down.
Well, let's talk about annual planning, one of your least favorite topics.
Oh yeah.
Tell me more, please.
Yeah, I absolutely hate annual planning. I think it's dumb. I think it's really stupid. And there's a couple of problems with it. The first is that the annual plan is trying to serve way too many masters. So you have the R&D department wants one thing out of it, the go-to-market department wants a different thing out of it, and then the G&A department wants something else out of it. And particularly with publicly traded companies, what you see that the CFO actually runs that process. And the reason why the CFO is running the process is that they need to forecast the revenue for the coming year in order to guide the street. So their whole thing is to build this very complicated model by projecting what it is that we're going to build and how much revenue we're going to derive from it. But the reality is that competition is moving daily. So one of the things that I observed at Atlassian is I said, look, every annual plan that we've done for the last several years, within the first quarter, we almost instantly derail it. There's a famous saying that no plan survives first contact with the enemy. And that's totally what was happening. So I was like, why are we living that fallacy? We should be moving to something that's much more nimble, something that's either 2 times a year or 3 times a year. And that allows us to think about strategy in a more flexible way and to think about it as really something that emerges. So strategy is something that is emergent, and it's got its life, and as we learn new things inside the company, or if external factors from competitors happen, we are able to address those. At Atlassian, I started this thing which was just crazy ambitious, and it really speaks to the founders for letting me give this thing a go. We created something called the Rolling Four. And the idea behind the Rolling Four is that every quarter you should look forward 12 months and you should update your plan. And it sounds extreme. You're like, oh, wait a minute, does that mean I'm annually planning every quarter? And it's like, no, the whole idea behind it is that, strategic plans, the strategies that you're following, they usually should be, there's not a lot of them, and they should be somewhat durable. They should last for multiple years, not multiple months or quarters. So the idea is that once you set that baseline strategy in plan, every quarter you should really just be asking a question. It's like, has anything changed with the competition, or did we learn anything internally, or did we deliver software that makes us revise that plan moving forward? And if so, let's just go ahead and update everything. And the idea was that you wouldn't spend a lot of time doing that. You'd make annual planning, or you'd make this planning cycle a lot shorter, and you would focus on what's actually changed. And there were some things about it that I think work really well, and there were some things about it that didn't work so well.
Because I know you love the sea, I'm going to use a sailing analogy, but think of a startup as a small kayak where changing direction is relatively easy because you don't have to coordinate with too many people, right? Yeah. When you are operating at the scale that you were operating and you identify something and you want to change, then what? Like, how do you go about actually influencing change without dying in between meetings?
Yeah, well, in that case in particular, what you're pointing out is a really salient point. Because if I was in a startup and I said, hey, I'm going to move from this annual planning thing to a rolling four thing, it would be straightforward. And the probability that the rolling four would work for a small startup is actually, I think, quite high. And I think it would be a superior model. When we did it, we were probably, because I joined when company was maybe 1,800, 1,900 employees, something like that. And then I left when it was close to 10,000. So I want to say we did this when it was maybe 7,500-ish people. So there's so many people that are going to be impacted by this thing. And I really credit the founders. This is where it's so beneficial to be working with a founder-led company, because if you can convince the founders, who are also the co-CEOs, that, hey, let's give this thing a try, they're so entrepreneurial. I can't imagine trying to do this at so many other large companies of that size. And they said, you know what, go for it. And then really what it takes is for someone to have enough courage to give it a go, because you're putting your name out there and you're putting your credibility out there. I surrounded myself with an amazing set of people. Some of the best project managers in the organization came in to help that effort. I identified who was actually going to be the underbelly of the change. And what I realized is that project managers in the R&D group, in the sales and marketing group, in G&A, really they were the lifeblood. They were ones that helped make a planning process possible. So I went to them and I asked them to join in the cause, and they were amazing. And then I went to each of the leadership teams. I remember joining the conversation with the CTO and his staff and explained why we were doing it, and I won their support. And then I went to the sales and marketing leadership team and I won their support. But a lot of it, again, I think just comes down to someone who's willing to, have the courage to do something that obviously there was a super high probability that it wasn't going to work.
I was thinking about a cruise, right? And of course, if you can convince the captain, that increases their likelihood of driving change, but you still need to put together a crew.
Yeah. No, convince the captain, get your crew, get together, give it a show. We talked a lot about it as being an experiment. When we originally rolled it out, we said this is going to be the alpha quarter, and then we're going to do a beta launch of it for the quarter. So that was really helpful to people, because we could say, look, we're going to make a bunch of mistakes, we're going to learn, we're going to roll those learnings out. And that also, it took a bunch of the pressure off of it. It didn't need to be a perfect release. It needed to be, this is the best we can do, given these constraints. And I think that helped take some of the edge off it too.
Because I'm also considering now that the Atlassian is a public organization, when you are also have an expectation by investors, by the street, what was that risk appetite to take big swings and really experiment with things that could either pay off really well or not work at all?
Yeah, no, I think the company's shown throughout its years, a healthy appetite to go after things that it thinks are going to be big opportunities, whether it's an acquisition, acquiring Trello, acquiring Loom. Those are big swings at new areas. We've shut down major products as well, which takes a bunch of discipline. It's not just about adding things. A lot of what's hard in our work is subtracting, like saying no to something. In particular, taking a product and shutting it down. I just saw that there was an announcement that Facebook Workplace is getting shut down, and that came out in the past day or so. And we had a product that was competing with Slack and Microsoft Teams in the early days, and we had actually acquired a company called HipChat, and that was really the category defining product, and then Slack was really the product that popularized it. But HipChat had been around before that, and we had worked on that product for many, many years, built up a team probably of like 170 people, maybe another 30-ish people working in the platform on it. And there we reached a point where we said, hey, this actually isn't going to work. I remember talking to the founders. I was only 10 months into my role when I had joined Atlassian, and I said, I don't think we're going to win this category and we should exit it. And their willingness to say, yeah, let's talk about that, bring it to a board, have a discussion, and then work through a process in which we ultimately wind up shutting that product down. We took a stake in Slack, so we got a nice equity investment that paid off super well. But yeah, there are tons of examples of Atlassian swinging big. And again, I do think part of that is the founder mentality that exists within the organization just really infects the people that are also in the organization, and they too have a desire to want to make big change.
I can imagine. I mean, one thing is going to the founder with an idea on, hey, we should do this, but hey, we should kill the baby. It's just absolutely crazy. And being able to have an environment where that can actually be discussed and that can be received and actually get to a productive situation where you can partner with, in this case, Slack, and the results are there, and like make it a win-win for everybody. Something that I haven't seen very often. It's usually shutting down a product is the last resource. It's like, oh my God, like if you don't shut it down now, we're all going down.
Yeah. I think at Atlassian, one of the things I really loved about the culture there, and people use different words for it, I would describe it as creative confrontation. And the idea is that you take an idea and you put it on the table, and with a small group of people, you work on that idea, and you work on it in an intellectually honest way. So you kind of say, hey, look, I'm not attacking the people that brought this idea, but I am going to try to make that idea better. And I do find that in cultures where they produce great results or really great products, they have these cultures where it allows you to have that kind of a conversation. And when I was at Yahoo, we didn't have that. And I think that was in some ways part of its downfall. We didn't really openly debate ideas, and we were very sensitive to people's feelings and so on and so forth. And I think that creative confrontation really thrives over at Atlassian.
Well, now let's talk about the current chapter in your life. You moved to the VC side of things. First of all, why?
Yeah, part of it was change. I love learning new things. I've been a product leader my entire career, pretty much. So I'm decades into it, and I wanted to try something different. One of the things that I had started to do was make some angel investments. And I really like that idea quite a bit of investing in companies. I love the idea that the way that you're going to get graded is very black and white. Like you're going to make an investment, and 7 or 8 years from now, you're going to have a liquidity event or you're not. And I love that. I love being able to measure my success. And then I would say the second thing is I as a CPO, that role changes, and you're not necessarily hands-on in the product the way that you were when you were younger in your career, and you're in these advisory roles. I remember I had spent some time advising the CPO over at Amplitude for a couple of years, and he and I became good friends, and I just really enjoyed that interaction. And he would bring some of the hard problems that he was facing in his company, and we would talk through them, and we would role play. So that's the other aspect of being a VC that I look forward to, is making investments and trying to dive in as that advisor and share my best thinking around patterns that I've seen, but at the end of the day, knowing that they are the person in the arena and they're the ones that are making the call. But I thought that I could get those two, the angel investment bug and the, hey, I really love this advising role in one package. And that led me to venture.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what's adding value to founders. Like as a founder myself, I always wanted to learn, to be close to people who've built it, who've done it, not just people who gave me money to go and run the thing. So I totally see the value from the founder point of view. Yeah. But VC, it's a relatively traditional industry where there's a specific career path for people who've been in finance, right? So how was that for you to break that mold? Because I haven't met that many former chief product officers turned venture capitalists.
Yeah, well, it's a very different role, because I was going from this chief product officer role. You have a chief of staff. At one point I had 2 EAs because I was had so many meetings around the world. So one sat in Sydney and one sat in the U.S. So you're usually like you're hyper coordinated, and in every minute of your day for many hours is all scheduled out, and you're meeting with your same team working on the same kinds of problems day in and day out. And I really love that team aspect of it. As a VC, you're much more like I would describe it as a solopreneur. You have a team of partners around you, and at any point in time, you can ask that partner for help, but you're not working with your partners, day in and day out the way that you were as an operator. We have our Monday meetings. Mondays are set aside, and we get a lot of that collaboration. But then the rest of the week, you're kind of on your own. And you might pull in an investor or a principal to help you look at some of the deals that you're looking at. But that is a pretty big change from the operator role. The good news for me is I am like wildly curious person. So I love learning about people that are trying to change the world and how they're trying to do it and interacting with them. And I find those relationships like really special.
You've been investing, at least officially, for almost 6 years. I'm sure you've also been investing on the side as a business angel. And I noticed that in Menlo, they have a very strong point of view on AI. So I would love to learn more about what's your take on it, and what are the type of businesses that you're excited about investing in.
Yeah, well, certainly we're all in on AI. In October, we raised $1.5 billion across two of our funds. One of our funds focuses really on seed to Series A, and then the other fund we call the Inflection Fund is A, B, C. When the business starts to inflect out, we try to preempt and lean into it. So we've got a lot of dollars set aside to focus on the AI wave. The first thing that Menlo focused on was really that foundational layer. So whenever you have these big paradigm shifts, it's sometimes good to compare to things like mobile. Like that was a big paradigm shift. It's very different, but it does have some similar characteristics. And the mobile change, because I was running the mobile group at LinkedIn at the time of that transition, the first thing that comes in is all the infrastructure and all the foundation, like how do you build a mobile app? It's the same thing here. It's like, how do you build AI? And we've made investments in companies like Anthropic. We were early in Anthropic. We led a large SPV, the last raise that Anthropic did there. We're in a company called Pinecone. Pinecone is used. It's a new form of a database that really enterprises that are building AI applications use for a variety of different reasons. And then there's another company we invested in called Unstructured, which helps us take some of the unstructured data and get it embedded into things like Pinecone. But again, think about these as like all foundational components. If you look again back at the mobile era, 2007 really kicks off the mobile era with the iPhone introduction. And it's not till 2 years later that you have companies like Uber and Dropbox, these iconic mobile companies getting started. So the application companies tend to follow the foundational layer. I would say the canonical date for AI is probably ChatGPT 3.5. That's like when the story really comes together and people realize it's really probably going to work this time. So we're still really early in that phase, right? So now our attention is starting to look at the app layer. I've personally spent a bunch of time looking at how the software development lifecycle is changing with AI, and there's certainly a lot of activity in that space. Sales and marketing is another big change that's happening, so we've been spending some time looking at folks in that area as well.
This just reminds me of what we were discussing before about the platform and the products on top of the platform, or what you also call the shipyard. So as you think about now specific applications on top of that foundational layer, we've seen that there's impact in so many different functions, specifically in product management. What have you seen so far?
It's kind of varying. I would say, if I look at the software development lifecycle and you just break it down into three big chunks, there's the planning chunk. That is where you see a lot of activity from the product manager and the designer, and then we move to develop and development. That's where the software engineers come in, construct the code. And then the third phase is operate, where we move that code into production and we support it in production. So I would say a lot of the activity that I'm seeing around AI is really focused on the develop part of it. You can look at the success of GitHub Copilot. GitHub Copilot zoomed to $100 million in ARR very quickly. That attracted a lot of attention. There are a number of pre-product, pre-revenue companies that already have billion or multi-billion dollar valuations. Cognition Labs produced a really spectacular video that they shared on Twitter that went viral around a product they're building, Devon. We see companies like Poolside, Magic.dev, Augment is another. These are very, very well capitalized companies. So I see a lot of activity there. I've seen on the plan side, I think the incumbents have been strong in making sure that they're not getting disrupted. You've seen Adobe, for example, where they had acquired Figma, but then they had to give it back. But they have, obviously the Photoshop products, but they've taken AI and really invested heavily there to try to make sure that they're not going to get disrupted on that angle. And then, Figma's done a bunch of stuff on the AI side as well. But I think, the thing about product managers is, and this, there's not a lot of tools out there that cater just to the product manager when you think about it, like that sell directly into it and have a budget. The designers, they're going to pay for a Figma-like tool, and then the developers, they have like 25 different tools that they buy, like whether it's GitHub or Jira, CI/CD tools. So they're just loaded up on tools. But the product manager, there's been a bit of a gap for a number of years. Of course, Product Board introduced something a while back, and that's got some traction. Jira Product Discovery just got introduced more recently, and that, from what I hear, is doing particularly well. But that's a little bit of what I'm seeing.
Totally, and to me, I think it sounds similar to what I saw when I was getting started with product school. There wasn't really that many tools for product managers. We were piggybacking on Adobe
Right.
Photoshop or Jira when it was mostly focused on project managers or spreadsheets to do data analysis. And now we have this whole market of product tech, and all of these tools you mentioned, Product Board, Amplitude, Figma, they are extremely low code or even no code. So a non-technical user can really create a lot without an engineering background. So I'm wondering if there is something there as we start seeing more and more AI embedded into products. They still seem to be focused a lot on the developer layer and empowering the technical folks to get something done. And there will be a point where like maybe the non-technical folks, like PMs, will start seeing some of those benefits too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That would be my expectation, my hope, my dream, right? Would be that the software development lifecycle has become way too complicated over the years. And when I originally started in the field, there was more of a concept of the full stack. Let's take engineers as an example. Like most of the engineers when I started in the field were full stack engineers. They did front end, they did back end, they did it all. Like they were generalists. And then over time, what has happened is we've gotten lots of specialization. We've got architects, we've got front end, we've got back end, we've got web dev, we've got DevOps, we've got SecOps, and it kind of list goes on. And that complicates our ability to do things because we need to coordinate with more people. I was talking to a number of different engineers over the last couple of months, and one of the things that they kept on coming back to was this theme that I would kind of describe as the collapse of the talent stack. It's like AI fills in the divots where I don't have a skill. So if you're a back-end engineer, they'll often say, well, I wasn't particularly good with the front-end technologies, and I wasn't good with CSS, but now that I have AI, that it can do those parts of my job, and it makes it much more fulfilling because I'm not waiting on someone. I can do those pieces myself with the help of a co-pilot.
Yeah, that also makes me think, like, what if AI is going to help the lazy people be more successful, or if there is an opportunity for the overachievers to now augment their impact?
Yeah, no, I think it's a little bit of both. I'm always like optimistic about it, so I always think about how can you supercharge the 10x people, or how would you make more 10x people might be a better way to think about it, because in my career that it's such a joy to work with someone who's 10x, and they're so rare. So will AI allow us to mint more of those folks?
What are the characteristics that you've seen in some of the 10x product folks or founders that you've come across?
Yeah, there's, I would start with, there's a lot of impatience in these folks, and that impatience is this drive to actually do the thing at the next level. So they have a super high bar, and they have ambition and impatience to want to solve for it. And I think they just have like natural, they're just naturally like really smart people. So whether you were born with it or you nurtured your way into it, I do think that they tend to be really smart. And then another characteristic which is often overlooked is I find that they are exceptional communicators a lot of times, because in order to get 10x work done, you tend to need to create a movement, and you need to get people behind that movement, and that's what helped magnify that project or the work that you're working on. So they have these very simple ways of describing what the problem and the solution is, and then communicating them broadly enough that people want to join that cause or that movement. And I think communication skills is another separator, particularly on the product side.
I've noticed when I see people whose solution is really simple for them, they are able to explain it in simple terms, but in reality, what they consider simple might not be that simple for the average human. But Joff, thank you so much for your time. It's been great to catch up with you in public and to learn more about how you're thinking about the future, investing, and artificial intelligence.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it's great to be on the show, and it's wonderful to see you again. Thanks for having me.